Now, Michael's been away, but here he's back. Riedel and Romeo. And we're about to embark on a new adventure here. So hang on, your questions, your comments, whatever you have, let it fly. And we're ready to answer. Michael, how are you?
Good, good. I go away for a bit, taking care of some family stuff, and not much happens in the news apparently while I'm gone. It must have been pretty boring while I was away for you, Ralph.
Nothing whatsoever. I mean, no big news whatsoever. The whole country stayed as was before.
Steady as she goes.
I don't
Steady as
know.
she goes.
Yes, yes, yes. Hey, you want to talk Iran? You want to talk the president being bold and just taking the aggressor
Yeah,
kind of aside? What do you think about that in a nutshell?
I think I think it is the decision that had to be taken. I think Iran has been dicking us around for too long. I think Democrats such as Obama and Biden didn't have the guts, the mettle to take out a country that, as we know, for the last, 50 years or so, has had the number one goal to destroy the United States and the number two goal to destroy Israel. And I think Democrats thought, oh, they don't really mean it. But I think that the Ayatollahs, who are religious fanatics, did mean it. And I think that's why they were trying to get nuclear weapons. And I have no doubt, had they been able to get them, which they would have been able to do under a Biden administration, under an Obama administration, they would have used them on Israel, or they would have used them to have total and complete dominance over the Middle East. And they would have threatened everybody with the nuclear weapons. So I think that Trump looked at the situation and said, this is not a world we can live in. We cannot live in a world where a fanatical regime has its hands on nuclear weapons. And we know, because of the protests that went on in Iran and the absolute slaughter of some 10,000 people that the government did, Trump said, it's time to give these people a hand. Take down that regime, let them take over the country. Iran can be a robust country. It has brilliant people, great technology. It could be a force for good in the world, but it has been cooped up by these fanatics for a long time. So, I mean, we don't know the outcome of this war, and God knows there are many scenarios in which it could be a total disaster for the world. And you could have ethnic strife and religious strife and civil war and the horrible things that we saw happen in Syria. That is, I regret to say, a possibility. But I optimistic and hope that the Iranian people will indeed rise up. And with the help of the United States, we can put Iran on the road to some sort of a democracy, maybe a democratic monarch if the Shah's son decides that he can go into the country. And I think that wouldn't be bad, actually. I think he clearly is a Western person. He is a Democrat, and he doesn't want to take over the country and run it as a dictatorship. But I would welcome Iran into the fold of Western democracies if it can happen. So I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say.
It's a bit unrealistic to me. Now, forget the regime change that's going to take place in a matter of 2.5 years, where you won't have a Trump administration there anymore. You're going to have a new regime that always makes changes, whether it's within the same party or not. They
Right.
still want to set their own, I guess, their own agendas. Is it unrealistic, Michael, to think that these people will never, this terrible regime will never ever get the weaponry? It's the fact is we have to make sure they don't use the weaponry. They're going. I think it's inevitable that they're going to get the weaponry, but don't you think we have to make sure they don't use that in negative fashion?
Well, if we are able to engineer a government that is not hostile to Israel, that is not hostile to the United States, why would they need nuclear weapons? I mean, they want them now because they want to destroy Israel and they want to destroy the United States. If you have a government in there that is not bent on the destruction of Israel, then why would they need nuclear weapons? They could have nuclear power for nuclear reactors and things, but they would then let our inspectors in. We would be perhaps part of a team that builds nuclear reactors for them. But why would they need nuclear weapons if they don't want to destroy Israel or destroy the United States anymore? Why would they need them?
Every country wants these for whatever reason. Mostly, they want them just, I guess, to I guess to have a force in the on the world stage or something to keep up with the Joneses, if you will. I don't know, but they want them. And also the people, they seem very agreeable right now. And I would say, would you say the country is split in half, where half are westernized, the other half are very indoctrinated with that heavy duty religious bent? Do you think it goes about half and half in Iran right now?
I don't know. I don't have the demographics. I think what has always kept the mullahs in power is that they have the Iranian Guard there, which is the powerful military force that does very well under the fanatical religious regime that is allowed to partake in the oil profits and everything else. So if you're in the military, if you're in the Guard, you're living quite well, and it suits your purposes to keep the Ayatollahs in power because they've made their peace with you. But I'd like to think that the vast majority of Iranians don't want to live in a society where women have to go veiled, where women can be killed if they are accused of adultery, where gay people are hanged. I can't imagine that sophisticated Iranians who have great education want to live in that society, but they had no choice. They had no choice. Now, the Shah was no picnic, by the way. I mean, I was actually reading a biography of the Shah, and he ran an authoritarian state, and he had the secret police, and he had prisons, and he tortured people. So this poor country has been fucked every which way they can imagine. But maybe now they have the hope of being a liberal society. I'm not saying that they're going to become America overnight. No country is, but an Iran that has its religious beliefs, but is not a threat to other countries, that is not bent on destroying other countries, and that gives freedom to its people, is not a bad outcome to have for this war.
Trump wants unconditional surrender, no
Well,
compromise. Do you think that's unrealistic?
well, I mean, has Trump ever really stuck to any position? He takes the extreme position as a negotiating tactic, and then he begins to negotiate and come down and figure things out. So I would never. I don't think Trump is inflexible on any position that he ever takes.
Yeah. I mean, he's as changeable as I change my socks.
Yeah.
Trump will say we are not going to do this, and then he gets talked into it by somebody gets in his ear and says, we love you, but you got to do it this way. So he listens to certain people. Is there anybody in your mind that he actually listens to, that actually has his or her effect on him in any way, shape, or form? Or do you think he just changes with the weather?
I think I think Bibi Netanyahu has a lot of influence, although I don't believe the New York Times reporting that Israel forced us into this, or Israel demanded we do this, or Israel somehow blackmailed us into doing it. But I think Trump and Bibi see the world in the same way, as a place that has a lot of threats. And I think both Trump and Bibi realized, you know what, we have immense power, the United States and Israel, as Israel has shown in the defeat of Hezbollah and and what it did to Hamas, right? And I think Bibi and Trump say, we have this power. Why don't we show the world we can use it? And we can change the world by using it, as opposed to just sort of waving it around and then doing nothing, as opposed to Barack Obama saying to Syria, we're going to draw a red line in the sand if you use chemical weapons against your people. And then he uses them and Obama does nothing. So then we prove to be a paper tiger. I think the success that Israel had uh, eviscerating Hamas and Hezbollah showed Trump that you can use force to vanquish, to take down your enemies. And I think Iran is the number one enemy, certainly for Israel. And I think Bibi was able to bring Trump along to say, now's the chance. We may never have this chance again, because once Iran gets nuclear weapons, all bets are off. So let's do it now.
It was ballsy. I mean, our man Trump has a lot of nerve, a lot of audacity. He did, yeah. You're right about Obama, where he drew the line about 5, 6 times,
Right.
and they crossed the line unceremoniously, and they just like it was never drawn in the first place. So Trump is kind of setting the mark a little bit higher, or he's trying to draw that line in the sand, where the line in the sand actually means something.
Well, yeah.
If you're going to lay down the law, you got to lay down the law. You got to stick with it, and it's hard to stick with it because everything is always compromise. There's no compromise with these people. Not, you know, the people themselves are so much in love with freedom. I've seen them time and time again. They embrace the Western way of life. But man, those religious zealots, Michael, are quite a different story.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting that the Democrats have a real problem with places like Iran, and I think what it comes down to, the Democrats, why they were never able to take on Iran. One, Democrats, I think by nature tend to be pacifists, and they think war is horrible, and we all think war is horrible. But unfortunately, we live in a world where there are wars. That's the way of mankind. But Democrats are anti-war, anti-war. War is the never the last resort. This, that, and the other thing. It's always diplomacy, diplomacy, diplomacy. And how many times do we get hoodwinked by the Iranians in diplomacy? But I also think, and this is where there is something corrosive in the Democratic Party. I believe that a lot of Democrats don't believe that America is a force for good in the world. I think they believe America is a force for evil because of racism and slavery and imperialism. And I think a lot of Democrats think, we mucked around in the Middle East. We screwed things up so many times. We did depose a leader of Iran back in the 50s. We did support the dictatorial Shah of Iran. And I think Democrats think we have been so terrible to other countries and other people in the world that we kind of get what we deserve, and we have no right to meddle in other countries like Iran. So we're just going to wave our big stick around, but we're never going to use it, because in a way we think, well, maybe Iran's justified in hating the United States, because we Democrats hate the United States too for all the horrible things that it's done. So I found it amazing to me that all the little lefties, those stupid little kids on campuses like Columbia, my alma mater, uh, they're protesting Israel, anti-Semitically, by the way, for destroying Hamas, which attacked Israel. And they identify closely with the Palestinians, and Israel's the oppressor. You didn't see any of these kids lift a finger to support the Iranian people when they were trying to rise up against their government and were being slaughtered. You didn't see any of the liberals say anything about that. You didn't see any tents built in support of the Iranian people who are trying to free themselves of a fundamental Islamic dictatorship. You didn't see the left in this country support those people at all. Why? Because they kind of like Iran, because Iran has been thumbing its nose at the United States for 50 years. And because they don't like the United States, they like countries that are sticking it to the United States. That's the corrosive part of the Democratic Party and liberals, I would argue.
Yeah, and there's some rogue Republicans or conservatives that feel the same way. Keep our nose out of everybody's business. Rand Paul comes to mind. Keep
Yeah.
keep our nose out of everybody's business. Just stick with our own affairs. And but sometimes on the world stage, you gotta stick your nose in somebody else's business because it affects us so much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an isolationist, but I don't think we need to meddle in every part of the world. But I do think that we have to recognize genuine threats. And what was the alternative with Iran? To wait until it gets a nuclear bomb, which is what it was going to get sooner or later. It was going to get one. Or sometimes it's better to head it off at the pass. Stop it before we have to deal with a nuclear Iran, and that's what Trump has done. I mean, I hope the outcome is good for the people of Iran. I don't know. I mean, we are in uncharted and dangerous territory, no question about it. But for now, I applaud the move to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
And I look down and I look forward because I'm reading the responses. In case you don't know, folks, and I'm very farsighted, so I got to lean. Yeah, Bayonet. Thanks for being there. Thanks for being there, everybody. Keep your responses, your questions. We'll get to them. You want to switch gears? Go to Guthrie, the kidnapping. We haven't been together for quite some time, and this thing went down weeks ago. But
Yeah.
still, we haven't spoken about it. Just your thoughts on that.
Well, it's a terrible, terrible tragedy for the family. I must say, I think that I can't remember his name now. The sheriff there in Arizona seems to be supremely incompetent. I mean, I caught his first press conference, and I thought, oh my God, I have no faith that this guy can lead any kind of investigation. And then he seemed to fall in love with being in the spotlight, being up there in the podium. So I don't know how effective he's been, but it does seem bizarre to me with all of the tactics that law enforcement has now. And the fact that we're in a society that is constantly monitored, we've got cameras everywhere, everywhere,
Mm.
right? We're never under the radar anymore. It is bizarre to me that these months have gone on with no leads that we know of, no clues, no nothing to her whereabouts. I mean, clearly she was abducted in a car, and the car has to go down roads that have, cameras all over the place now. I find this really, really bizarre. With no leads that as I we know, maybe they have things we don't know of, but how many people have just disappeared with an abduction like this? Usually, you'd think law enforcement has the tools and the capability right now to have found her quickly, dead or well, I hope that she's alive. God forbid, dead. But that this just big mystery is something I don't quite understand.
Yeah, yeah, it's shocking. It's gotta be an inside job. And this woman,
I
what
don't
is
know.
she, 85 pl is she 87 years old? Or
Yeah,
am
yeah,
I right on
yeah,
that?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, we're in need of medication within days of her abduction. They said
yeah.
that if she's without her medication, she's gonna die within a day or 2, whatever she has, maybe diabetes or something. I don't get it, but here we are, and it seems like it's not moved forward whatsoever. I mean, we're at the same stage we were 3 weeks ago, and, I don't know. I don't know. Why do people, when they abduct somebody, why do they fool themselves thinking that they're ever gonna get away with something like this? In other words, they're gonna get the ransom money, they're gonna go it's gonna be some sort of Dog Day Afternoon situation.
Right.
You know, I
Well,
I I don't know why they believe they're gonna be successful,
well, so far they've eluded capture.
but
But
they have nothing to show for it, though. That's
well,
the thing.
we don't even know if these ransom notes are genuine.
Yeah. If
I
you had
mean,
if you had a guess if you had a
yeah,
guess, Michael, where is this coming from?
uh,
It's
the
hard to even
pessimist.
make a guess. It's hard to even
Yeah,
make a guess because it's so outrageous, but, who's
yeah.
who's the guy that you would say, "Yeah, that points to him, that points to her." Anybody?
I don't know. I mean, there's a scenario that I've heard spun out that does make some sense to me that this was not a planned abduction, that it was a break-in gone wrong, and unfortunately she was killed in the break-in, and they just took the body and disposed of it somewhere. I mean, I have a
Yeah,
hard time. I have a hard time believing she's still alive, especially with if she doesn't have any medication. So,
yeah, yeah.
but it's
Jesse J
terrible, right?
yeah,
Terrible.
Jesse Jackson passed away. He was a presence for many, many years. What are your thoughts on Jesse from the past and, now that he's gone?
Well, too much of a showboater for my taste. It seemed to always be about Jesse Jackson, and he gave a good speech. I don't know if he accomplished a whole heck of a lot, but a lot of people who were around Martin Luther King resented Jesse the way he used King's assassination to promote himself. Right at the time, wiping the blood on his shirt and giving all the interviews and saying things that people doubted. That King, he was the last person to speak to King, and King told him this and told him that, and a lot of the people who were around the assassination at the time said a lot of the stuff that Jackson said happened did not happen, and there was a rift between him and King's other other colleagues. And also one thing about Jesse, which was only briefly hinted at in the obituaries, but which was true, he did run to some extent a shakedown operation. He would go into places and have a protest against it. If there weren't enough black-owned McDonald's franchises, he would go to a town and he would protest the McDonald's, and then they would have to give a franchise to an African American, and often it was his brother who came in afterward quietly and got these franchises and took advantage of the shakedown operation. So I don't think Jesse Jackson was the purest person on the planet, but he was important in the civil rights movement, and you can't take that away from him. But I was not a huge fan, shall we say?
A lot of charisma, a lot of, savvy, a lot of charisma. Yeah, I remember him. 1984, is that when he ran?
Yeah, when he gave the famous speech at the convention. Listen, he drew attention to the plight of African Americans when they were being forgotten here, and for that we owe him a debt of gratitude, no question about it. But he was too much of a showboater for my taste.
All right, Christy Nome is no longer in the picture.
She was an idiot. I mean, Trump should have knocked her out a long, long time ago when she was spending money on her advertising and making her look like, you know, the female John Wayne on her horse and all. I mean, come on,
Yeah,
please. What an idiot she was. And she mishandled the whole ICE situation. And yeah, she was terrible. You know, Trump, he can hire some decent people, certainly some good people, but man, when he goes off the rails, he gets some real doozies. He really does. And she was one of them.
she's a
So
good
I,
looking.
I
She's a good looking woman. She fits the bill. You see these Barbie dolls getting a lot of recognition in the Trump regime for whatever reason. I hate to be so superficial, but he's superficial.
well,
That's
he
why
is.
I'm superficial.
He picks them
There's no
because they're
doubt
cute.
about it.
Yeah.
She's where she is or was because of her outward appearance. I mean, that's obvious to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Trump likes to surround himself with pulchritude, right? He wants to look around the cabinet table, and he wants a couple of cutie patooties there. You know, he doesn't want to look at a bunch of old, overweight, middle-aged, drabby bureaucratic guys there. He wouldn't be able to focus his attention on the cabinet meeting if they were if they were all boring
It's true.
dudes.
That's true.
So,
So we're 2 years in, Michael. Scale from 1 to 10 on one. What would you rate the Trump administration? I'll give you categories. On the economy, how has Trump's economy compared to Biden's economy? Although they often blame the previous president for the current state of the economy, they say it takes a long time to come around again. But now we're 2 years in. Has Trump made a dent in this rather bad economy?
well, until a few days ago, because of the war, my stock portfolio was doing pretty well under Trump. So
Good.
I can't complain on that front. I think he got a little carried away with the tariffs. I mean, anybody could have told him he was going to go up against the Supreme Court there. And I think again, he's incapable of handling things in a nuanced way. He could have gotten some tariffs. He could have gotten some of them through Congress. Instead, he just decided I'm going to ignore Congress, and sooner or later, it does say in the Constitution, Congress does have the power of the purse. The Supreme Court was going to knock him down. So I think that was a miscalculation on his part. I'm ambivalent about tariffs. I think they can be used sometimes for good, but the blanket sweeping notion that they're going to solve all of our problems, I think, is unrealistic. But it is remarkable how well the economy has held up. We'll see what happens with the war in Iran, but I can tell you this: if the war in Iran goes the best way, the right way, it could unleash very good economic forces in the Middle East, with Iran becoming a vibrant part of the world economy. That could be, in the long run, good for all of us. You know, I mean, fundamentally, I'm a
Historically,
capitalist. Yeah, fundamentally, I'm a
historically, do you
capitalist.
think you?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. And historically, do you think this is going to go down as a world event of the 21st century, one that we'll look back on and say, "Wow, this president had a lot of cojones, as they say in Italian, and he did something the other presidents were very afraid to do." Do you think this is going to go down as something huge?
No question about it. If it works out, yes. Although, if it doesn't work out, it'll go down in infamy, as they say. But I will tell you this: I hope I live long enough to see the historians grapple with the Trump presidency, because even if by any measure that the Trump presidency is a success, I think most liberal academics will never, ever be able to write books saying anything other than that Trump was evil and authoritarian and destroyed democracy as we know it. I don't think anybody will ever be able to give him his due, certainly if he pulls off this war in Iran. But going back to the economics, Trump is fundamentally a capitalist, I think, with some interesting little socialism ideas here and there. He is one for the mixed economy, I guess. But I just fundamentally don't believe that the democratic way of looking at the economy, that we can tax and tax and tax and redistribute wealth, is ever going to work. And I think we're going to see the consequences of that in the little petri dish that is now New York City, with Mamdani being our mayor and all the things he wants to do. I mean, when he says he wants to raise property taxes 18%, I mean, you and your lovely wife have left the city. I can tell you, if those taxes go up, I'll have to seriously think about where I'm going to go. I'm not going to stay in a city, especially as I near retirement. which is going to be my real estate taxes are going to be 18%. Are you kidding me? I mean, that is just insanity.
Well, Michael's in the village, and he's among all these old brownstones, beautiful. I mean, this dates back. It's beautiful down there. I always adored the village very much. And if you're thinking about leaving, where everything is New York based, everything you've done for the past 25, 30 years has been New York, New York, New York. I'm sure you're not by yourself. Everybody's fleeing to Texas, fleeing to Florida, fleeing to the so-called free states where they can do what they want to do, and they're not overly taxed. I mean, you're going to head down to Florida and spend the rest of your days in the sun, and you're going to get burned because you're a very fair guy.
There's something called suntan lotion, Ralph. Although it's kind
Okay,
of fun.
sunblock.
It's. I was thinking about that the other day when we were kids. My mother used to rub baby oil on us. Remember, they used to put baby oil on you. I mean, we're all gonna have melanoma at some point because when we were kids in the '70s, you wanted as much sun as you could get. So there was no sunblock. There was no Neutrogena sunproof 80. There was baby oil. That's what you put on your body until you were red as a beet.
I know you're right about that. We used to go cook at the beach, and it was a lot of fun. We didn't know any better, so it was great. I enjoyed it. Oh no, you're right about that. But sun, the thing is, sun is no good. But I hate to tell you, a little bit of sun, you have to get some sun, folks.
Oh yeah.
You got to get out there and get out in the sun, maybe 15 minutes, if nothing else. I know people who spend their whole lives indoors, Michael. That can't be healthy. You got to get outside a little bit. I know you get outside. Don't you get outside even? You still ride your bike?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But listen, the older I get, the more I like sunshine in January and February. And you get that in Florida. We certainly have not gotten it up here in the north. Certainly not here. So,
I know.
um,
Well, you're
but
right.
I
No, you're right about that.
but I do think that for middle class people such as myself in New York, it's becoming increasingly untenable to stay there. And Mondami just says all the rich people will always be here. Rich people can be anywhere. I mean, I know a lot of rich people who have companies that they move their companies out of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut to places like Texas or Florida because the regulations are so much easier to run a company than it is to do anything in these states, which overregulate everything. And even
Yeah.
if you're rich,
How
why do you want to be? Yeah, if you're rich, why do you want to be fleeced? I mean, I'll give you an example of a friend of mine who just by moving down to Florida, and he could stay in New York if he wanted to, but his accountant said you're going to be saving $1.5 million a year just by relocating to Florida in the taxes you won't be paying. And he's like, why wouldn't I want to save $1.5 million a year? Why wouldn't I?
all right. All right. So we have something here. I burn as I burn, I'm pale. I have freckles and I have sunblock now. Okay, we're describing the way this person combats the sun. Okay, okay, roused it. You know,
This guy
these
says he used
people
to
are
get boils on his back.
goofy
Boils. When's the last time you've seen somebody with a
but
boil?
think about this. We talked Iran. We talked Trump's financial situation in America. What do people comment the most about? The sunburn, of course, the things that don't mean so much. But then again, everything that was good used to be figured to be good. Milk, sun, all those things in the past that we had to have. Now we don't pay any mind to anymore. But okay, we have. I just have a few things to hit with people because I have actually more responses down here that I can see a little bit better. Okay, somebody that's called SP45. Is that sun protection 45?
Yeah.
SP45. He says that the weapons will be if they get the weapons, which is like I said before, inevitable. They're going to get the weapons. Going back to Iran. They're going to get the weapons. Will we be able to put sanctions in place for them not to use it, or for them to fit in on the world stage where everybody has them, but yet they don't use them? That's the question. Now, what do you think about that, Michael?
Well, I mean, the question about not using the weapons, a lot of sane countries want weapons for deterrence, right? To prop up their regime. That's why That's why North Korea got nuclear weapons. Not that they were going to use them to blow up the world, but they wanted them so that they could prop up their regime. That's why Kim Jong Un's father got nuclear weapons, because once you have them, you can't mess with them. But what if you're dealing with what the Iranians are, which is the mullahs are fundamentalists who believe in the destruction of the great Satan? How do you handle that if they actually believe that, which I think they do? And once they get the nuclear weapons, they can destroy the great Satan, which is the United States, and the little Satan, which is Israel. So, why should we think that the Iranians, the mullahs, are sane, rational people who will get the weapon just to protect their regime? If they're saying we will get that weapon so we can use it, we want their stated aim is to wipe Israel off the map. Why should we not take them at their word?
And our friend Simon asks, how long is this going to take? In other words, to get where we want to go, the United States, how long is this going to take? This going to be a long, drawn out affair or something that's wrapped up in a relatively short period of time?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think the best outcome is that whoever gets in power in Iran says to the United States, "All right, stop bombing us. We'll make our peace with you, and we will agree not to go after a nuclear weapon." And the United States has the ability to help rebuild rebuild Iran. When we rebuilt Europe after World War II with the Marshall Plan, I don't think we have the kind of resources to do something like that on that scale anymore. But we certainly can help bring Iran into the fold of sane nations, because I think Iran, unleashed with capitalism and democracy, could be a very important economic engine for the world. These are incredibly skilled people, the Iranians. They just have been under the yoke, under the thumb of this fundamentalist oppressive regime. Unleash their instincts, unleash their talent, unleash their know how, and you can have a vibrant economy in the Middle East that can only benefit all of us in the long run.
Our friend Bayonet, Louis, I know your name, Bayonet. He asks, do you think there anything good on Broadway these days worth seeing, or is it all shit? And
Um,
Michael Riedel will tell you the truth.
right.
I guarantee. Go ahead.
The thing I enjoyed the most was Just in Time. Jonathan Groff as Bobby Darin. He was terrific. He's leaving the show now, and they're bringing somebody else in who's very good. I can't remember who's coming in, but terrific. The show's great fun. If you just want a really light evening in the theater with those wonderful Bobby Darin songs, that is your best bet. The other stuff that I've seen, I've not been crazy about. Sadly, there's a kind of malaise that's settled on Broadway. I was talking to a friend of mine who writes Broadway shows the other day, and he's been to see everything, and he said, it's just nothing excites me. There's nothing out there that's giving the business in New York City the jolt of excitement that the producers did, or Hamilton, or The Lion King, or some of the classic shows now, Chicago, where it just seemed to lift everything and made you fall in love with the theater and made New York City seem exciting and vibrant. There's no show out there, I think, that's doing that right now. And I regret to say, I'm talking to my friends in the theater, they haven't really found the show on the horizon that they think is going to be the next Hamilton. And it's been 10 years, Ralph, since we've had a mega musical that the world knows. I don't think you could name in the last 10 years a musical that the world knows the way it knows Hamilton, Rent, or Chicago. There hasn't been anything that big.
What do you attribute that to? What's going on? The creativity is just not there. Maybe they can't get backing for these shows. A brand new show. They know a certain show that's done has been done in the past is going to work again. Maybe they don't want to take a chance on
Well,
a brand new piece.
the issue is the economics. The economics, they've never been great on Broadway, but they are in a terrible state now. I mean, everything just costs so much money. And when you do have a show, I mean, I thought the most exciting show the last couple of years was the revival of Sunset Boulevard with Nicole Scherzinger, which was sensational. And it was a sellout. It was an absolute sellout. And it still lost, I think it only returned 40% of its $15 million investment because the numbers were against it. So if you have a show that gets great reviews, that has tremendous word of mouth, and it can't recoup, what kind of business is that? What's the point of going into the business if you know you're just throwing your money out the window?
How about these shows, Michael? Neil Diamond, going back a ways about the whole retrospective about the Four Seasons, all that. Is that really a Broadway show or just a glorified concert? Think about it, Michael. You
Well,
have all the Four Seasons songs in Jersey Boys. You have the Beach Boys thing that fell on its face years ago that I happen to remember. I mean, are
yeah.
these Bruce Springsteen on Broadway? Are these concerts or actual Broadway shows? To me, they're concerts.
Well, no, I think Jersey Boys is a Broadway show. It has a really solid script by Rick Ellis and Marshall Brickman, and it's the story of the Four Seasons. So it does what a musical should do, which it tells a very compelling story, and it uses the songs in a fascinating way to propel the story ahead. It's not just a musical that says, "Oh, I fall in love with a girl named Sherry. Now we're going to sing Sherry." No, it's using the music to illustrate how the Four Seasons became phenomenally successful singing group. So I would definitely say that's a musical. I don't have strict definitions of it. I thought Springsteen's show on Broadway was terrific. It was not his concert. It was, I would argue, a play with music in that he used his songs to illustrate his life, to tell you his life story. So it had a plot. It cohered. You learned a lot about Bruce Springsteen, the man, through the use of his songs, skillfully arranged so that you felt you were going on a narrative drive with him as he grew up with the struggles of his life, the struggles with his father. And he was very reflective on his life. So to me, that was a wonderful piece of theater. Is it a traditional Broadway musical? No, but we don't have to have traditional Broadway musicals. I think anything that is exciting, thrilling, live, engaging qualifies as theater. I mean, I don't want Broadway to be pigeonholed just with people singing happy songs and tap dancing. I'd shoot myself if every show I had to go to was just tap dancing and smiles. Please, I mean, how boring would that be? We need a nice mix of things. I love a serious musical. A great Stephen Sondheim musical like Little Night Music happens to be one of my favorite musicals, and it's poignant and wistful, sad, witty, has some wonderfully witty songs in it, but it also has some heartbreaking songs. So yeah, I don't have traditional rules with which I define theater. To me, the only thing is that it has to be exciting, exciting and thrilling, and you can only get it when it's live. You can only get
You
that
got to be able
feeling.
to. You should talk about these things on the way home, going out to dinner afterwards. This should
Oh
be
yeah.
the focal point of your conversation. To me, that's good theater.
Mhm.
Hey, Michael, the most skillful. This is my subject. The most skillful actor on stage that you've ever seen, male.
Oh, uh, I would have to say it would be a toss up between Frank Langella and Brian Dennehy. Two guys who are good friends of mine. Brian's no longer with us, sadly. But to see Frank Langella in a play like Frost Nixon, he was phenomenal. To see Brian Dennehy in Death of a Salesman and Long Day's Journey and Tonight, um, Brian just had such power, such power. And Brian was a great tragedian, and he played these tragic characters. Willie Loman, arguably the most tragic figure in American drama, in American literature, really. And Brian played it as if you were playing King Lear. It's a Death of a Salesman has the epic proportions, I think, of Shakespeare, of King Lear, and Brian was able to do that brilliantly. I still see his performance. I remember Arthur Miller called Death of a Salesman originally. The play was called Inside His Skull, because if you look at the play, a lot of it takes place inside Willie Loman's mind. He's spinning out fantasies all the time, and as Brian performed the show, he would increasingly put his fingers to his head like this because you could feel that he was just trying to hold his thoughts in his head because they were spilling out all over the place, and he was no longer able to organize them. And as Willie Loman is beginning to get more and more suicidal and depressed and cracking up, you could just see Brian pushing his fingers on his head like this to try to keep himself together. And it was a fascinating physical thing that he did. And Frank Langella, when Frank did Frost Nixon, he it is a funny thing to say, but he spent so much time working on phlebitis because Nixon had phlebitis. And so to play the part of Nixon, Nixon was in constant pain with the phlebitis. And that was one of the things that made Nixon kind of a dark, brooding character because he was in pain. And Frank worked on the phlebitis, on the slight limp. But every time you take a step, the pain is there. I mean, that is, a subtle kind of acting and physicality in acting. As you know, Ralph, is so important. I remember Harvey Firestein once telling me something that Laurence Olivier said. He said, "When you find the shoes, you found the character."
That's right.
And Harvey always said when he did Tevye on Fiddler on the Roof, he said, "I took a lot of time to pick the right boots for Tevye, and I knew when I found the boots, I had the character."
Olivier used to do a thing, Michael, with the nose. No matter
Yeah,
what part he played, even in Marathon Man, that rings really clearly in my mind because I remember that film like it was yesterday for some reason. He affected some kind of a fake nose for every part, whether it was Shakespeare or Marathon Man. And until he got done with the exterior, he could not work on the interior.
right.
That was Olivier's approach, and far different from a guy like, I don't know, Monty Clift or Marlon Brando and these types.
Yeah,
Hoffman, to be exact. And famously, Hoffman in Marathon Man would run the whole length of Central Park, or at least the upper part there, and then come back to Larry Olivier and say, "Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready." And then Olivier would famously say
right.
to him, "Have you ever, young man, have you ever tried acting? You know, instead
Yeah,
of all this
I know. Yeah.
bullshit that you go through, have you ever tried acting?"
Dear,
Well,
yeah, he said I think he said,
yeah,
"Dear boy, why don't you try acting?" By the way, I want to say, Smooth Will, he's got a comment here, and we were just talking about some of the great performances I saw. And he says Charles S. Dutton in the piano lesson. Smooth Will, 100%. Charles Dutton, Rock Dutton is a great actor, and I have a story about him. So years ago, I went up to the Eugene O'Neill Center, the Drama Center up in New London, Connecticut. Beautiful town, by the way, which is where O'Neill lived, and you can actually go to O'Neill's childhood home, which is the setting for Long Day's Journey into Night. Monte Cristo, the house is called. Anyway, so Rock Dutton was doing a 90-minute show based on the plays of August Wilson. And Ralph, to this day, it was one of the most phenomenal things I've ever seen.
mhm,
He was able to convey August's development as a writer, as a great writer, by playing the various characters in various scenes in all of August's plays. And he reduced it all to 90 minutes. And it was absolutely thrilling. And it was really one of the most extraordinary performances. He understood August so well. He understood those characters, the anger, the frustration, the disappointment that so many of August Wilson's characters have, the males especially, the men especially. And I was so taken with it that I called him up and I said, "You've got to take this to Broadway or off Broadway. This is a great introduction for anyone who does not know the plays of August Wilson. This 90-minute sampler, if you will, of the brilliance of August Wilson." And I was going to invest in it. That's how taken with it I was. I said, I'll raise the money for it. I think this has got to be seen outside of the O'Neill Festival. And man, I made so many calls and I lobbied and I got August Wilson's lawyer involved and he went to see it and he agreed. And I said, August plays they're long and a lot of people are reluctant to do them because they're so long. I said, but man, if you could put this out there with a rock, it's going to just drive people to those plays and remind you how great the plays are. And I remember it was Costanza, August Wilson's widow, Costanza. She wouldn't give the rights to it because she said Augustus plays have to be done as the full length plays. No 90-minute version, no sampler, no nothing. And I just argued. I said, yeah, but this is going to turn people on to the plays again. And then who's a better ambassador for August's work than Dutton, showing you how brilliant these plays are, these great characters. And he's put together this fabulous evening, but she wouldn't authorize it, so it never got anywhere, which was a great disappointment to me because it was one of the highlights of my theater going experience.
and give me a bad experience. We've said this before, but now we're in a different venue. Um, the worst experience you had by somebody seeking revenge against you. Maybe saying, you wrote that thing about me a couple of weeks ago. I have not forgotten yet. Anything ever happened to you where you turned around and you saw this guy ready to really do something that you didn't want done to you because of something you said in the past?
Yeah, when I went to a performance of the fiasco Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, they actually dropped one of the kids playing Spider-Man on my head during the show. No, kidding.
Purpose?
No, but remember
Didn't somebody fall to their death during the course of that show, or hurt
Ralph, that was the
themselves badly?
Ralph,
Not
that,
that show,
that
but not that particular.
No, Ralph, that was the most dangerous show in the history of Broadway. They had so many accidents. So one guy in the cast broke his wrists. One of the
Right.
girls in the cast got hit on the head with a cord and had a concussion. And then the worst of all was the poor kid who tumbled into the orchestra pit and broke his ribs.
Yeah.
I mean, it was you took
That was the one I was thinking about. The guy, yeah, the kid that right into the orchestra pit. Oh
into
my
the orchestra
goodness.
pit, into the orchestra pit. And then when you went to see that show, I mean, it became sort of a daredevil event just to be in the audience because when they flew people over your head, you wonder, are they going to drop them on us? Is the rope going to break? Is it going to fall on the heads of the audience? I mean, people were white knuckling the chairs when this show started, but people came to hoping to see a collision, hoping to see somebody fall in the orchestra pit. It became a collision sport to go to Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
That's one thing to draw a crowd. You know,
Yeah.
a nice car wreck always draws crowds. So it's the same thing. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. The the single worst fiasco on stage that you've ever witnessed, not by a particular actor, but the show itself. Forget Spider-Man.
Right.
Something different, more like a play that was very established, and then when they put it up, for some reason, never really worked. Anything?
Yeah, it was really terrible. There was a revival several years ago of The Odd Couple with Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane, great Neil Simon's classic play, and that was a big dud. And as talented as Matthew Broderick is, he was going through, I think, a difficult period in his acting career where there was no acting going on. He seemed to have lost it for a bit of time there, and I know he didn't know his lines, and that was a frustration to Nathan Lane because Nathan is letter perfect. He knows everybody else's before the rehearsals even begin. He's memorized the play front to back. And Nathan was deeply frustrated that Matthew didn't have the lines and was kind of checked out. And you saw that performance. And it was the only time I ever saw an actor who wasn't there. And this is Matthew Broderick, who's a really talented, smart guy. But for whatever point in his life, I actors straining so hard to put the play over because Matthew just wasn't there. So that was bad. And Joe Mantello, who's a wonderful director, but I don't know if Joe had the ability then to do a comedy. Joe's excellent with dramas. Nobody better. I mean, I think Joe's up there with Elia Kazan right now when he gets some terrific performances out of people in dramatic plays. But I don't know if Joe had the Neil Simon sensibility or sense of humor to pull off The Odd Couple. So that was pretty dreary and disappointing for someone like me who loves Neil Simon. I'm not one to run down Neil Simon. I know it's fashionable to turn up your nose at Neil Simon because he was so popular. But I would argue that his trilogy, Brighton Beach Memoirs, Biloxi Blues, and Broadway Bound. Those three plays should be right up there with the literature of the American stage. They're up there in my mind with Death of a Salesman and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and Long Day's Journey into Night. They're great plays about the Jewish American experience in the 20th century.
How about the avant-garde theater? And what's the best offbeat thing, like not mainstream, that you've seen recently? Anything?
Um, yeah, it wasn't avant-garde in the sense you think of kooky people doing kooky things, but it was not a traditional play. However, it was incredibly compelling. Do you remember that horrible tragedy in England several years ago now, the Grenfell fire where that tower caught on fire,
I do.
and
Yeah.
the people couldn't get out and they burnt up. They couldn't get them out of the tower, and it turned out it was all the cladding that was flammable. So the whole thing was built to be basically a chimney, and it was lower income people, and the builders had cut all the corners and used all the materials that they shouldn't have used, and they turned this place into an inferno. There was a play I saw at St. Anne's Warehouse out in Brooklyn, which is a great place to go. They do some really interesting stuff, a lot of stuff they bring in from England. And this play was called Grenfell, and it was the transcripts, just the transcripts of the Grenfell hearings. They had a big inquiry into the thing. And you would think, pages and pages of people just doing the transcript would be boring. It was so compelling the way they laid out how these corrupt construction people, the corrupt city council, everybody saving money and everybody thinking, you know what, these are poor people living here. They don't need nice things, they don't need amenities. We can cut corners and no one's ever going to know. And that was really brilliant play and incredibly moving and incredibly compelling.
Anybody you want to answer down below? You can see it better than I can see it. I can tell.
Yes, somebody says his mother was close friends with one of the original Dream Girls on Broadway. I wonder who that was. Um, I interviewed, what was her name? She played Effie. Oh God, the mind goes at our age, Ralph.
Hmm.
It'll come to me in a moment. Anyway, she was the big fat girl. And she sang, and I'm telling you, I'm not going. Jennifer Holliday.
Yeah.
Who's terrific now and lost a lot of weight. I interviewed her on Theater Talk back in the day, and she came on, and I was looking forward to meeting her because she's a woman who put over, and I'm telling you, I'm not going. And then she talked about her life story after Dreamgirls and the depression she went into, couldn't get roles because she was too fat. She just won the Tony Award, colossal performance, but she had some psychological issues and her career never took off. And it was just a sad, slow decline and drug use and alcoholism. But she pulled herself out of it. And her life story was so compelling. I called a friend of mine at Simon and Schuster and I said, that's my publisher. And I said, "You got to take a look at this interview I did with Jennifer Holliday because her life story is a book, and I think she got a book deal out of it. And she's working on her memoir, but it was a real pick yourself up after being at the height, after being the toast of the town in New York, after being putting over one of the great songs and the to this day great performance on the Tony Awards when Jennifer Holliday sang, and I'm telling you, I'm not going. Astonishing. You can see it on YouTube. It's absolutely astonishing. And to go from that to a complete and total collapse of your career was devastating to her. But she looks great now. Check her out. She looks
Oh
terrific.
yeah.
And she's so much fun. So much. It's just a wonderful person. Wonderful, wonderful person. Still sings.
And,
Still sings incredibly well. Although she did tell me she worried when she lost all the weight if it would affect her voice. That she may have
hmm,
needed to have to sing the way she did with the kind of energy that she had. But it didn't happen. Barbara Streisand famously never had a nose job because she was afraid it would change her
that's
voice.
that's
And
right. Opera singers don't want to drop pounds for the same reason. Yeah. Anything on your mind that we didn't touch on?
um, well, I still fear for the future of our beloved city, New York City, under Mamdani. I mean, I think that this guy just, thank God, Kathy Hochul. I never thought I would be thankful for her, but she's not going to let him raise the taxes on millionaires. But he's going to find a way, one way or the other, to squeeze that money out of us because I think he realizes he's not a practical politician. He's a fundamental believer in remaking society in the mode of communism, of the socialist progressive left that he is, and he will do that. And I think he's got nothing but contempt and hatred for people who've worked hard and who have money, and he wants to squeeze them. He wants to get everything out of there he can and give freebies away to a lot of people. And I just think that's a recipe for disaster. The whole thing with rent control, I mean, anybody, any economics person, anyone in real estate will tell you, when you have rent control, well, your costs as the landlord go up. And not every landlord is a gazillionaire landlord who owns hundreds of buildings. There are a lot of small landlords who own a building with maybe 4 units, and that's how they make their living. But you slap rent control and regulations on them, their costs are going to go up. They can't raise the rent. Sooner or later, their building loses money, and that's when people abandon buildings. That's what happened in the Bronx. All those empty buildings in the '60s and '70s, they were empty because landlords couldn't afford to keep them anymore, so they just walked away from them.
Hmm. Do
You
you think
know,
he's shown his true colors, or is there worse to come? Because I think, and his friendship with Donald Trump is very strange. Trump doesn't have a bad thing to say about him. I can't. I guess I know where that's coming from. Keep your enemies close, kind of a thing,
yeah, and
perhaps. But I guess, but it's kind of weird. How about talk radio? Just quickly before we say goodbye, we've been on for a while, but just talk radio. Generally speaking, right now, do you ever tune in? As you know, Michael is the former morning guy for many years. with Len Berman on WOR. Now Curtis Sliwa is going to move into that slot on Monday, Michael, if you haven't heard. And it's going to be interesting. He's going to take revenge against all his adversaries, now adversaries at WABC. You're going to have a bloodbath between OR and WABC.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I once I got out of it, I really don't pay much attention. I don't listen. I'm a big BBC guy. That's what I listen to now. So, but I guess for the AM talk radio, what the average age is about 80. So I guess it'll be gladiatorial combat for the 80-year-old set. They'll they'll love it. I wish Curtis the best. He's a friend of mine. I like Curtis. I took him to the Fan of the Opera once. We had a good time. But I don't know if these things have much currency anymore. I really don't know. I don't know. You know, I actually
All right.
I listen to NPR a lot only because I like to know what the enemy's thinking.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're fair and balanced all
Oh
the
yeah,
way.
they amuse me with their pomposity, and they're saying, we're the only media outlet that's delivering hard hitting real news without any kind of agenda at all. And next up, Donald Trump is Hitler.
Pretty much.
That's all it is.
No exaggeration. Pretty much.
But
Pretty much.
I can't get I just can't get enough of their self importance and their pomposity. It's the most amusing thing on radio to hear them intone as if they're they're so enlightened. They're doing these hard hitting stories about how evil Donald Trump is. And then you think, you're having no impact whatsoever. You're just preaching to the converted. And then when they're not telling you how evil Donald Trump is, they've got their hand out for your money. Give us your car, give us your house, give us your firstborn, cut your kids out of the will, leave us all your money. We're doing God's work as journalists and you should pay for us. Ridiculous.
You get a tote bag.
Oh yeah.
Come on, you get one of those famous tote bags.
Yeah, I
Um,
call it's your virtue signaling tote bag. It shows that you are a good old progressive and you think the right way as you run around New York with your WNYC bag, buying your green vegetables and your organic shakes and all that other kind of crap that all these progressives love.
organic shakes.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, are you still training? Are you working out?
I am, yeah, yeah, I am. Yep. I'm up in Connecticut for a little bit here, and there's a wonderful YMCA in New Canaan I'm going to, and I do. I don't know. You know more about the workout stuff than I do. I do these CrossFit classes where they got me lifting free
Mhm.
weights, jumping on boxes, and doing planks and all this kind of stuff. But it's fun. It's great fun.
All right. All right. So we do this thing. We set it up. Do it again next week.
Are we live now from now on, Ralph? Is this our new thing?
Well, it depends on how it went. I think it went pretty well. I can't see the damn lettering, which is taken away. We'll have to have you read it. You can read it because you can see it better than I can. And when you spot a question that you want to answer, just chime in with it. That's okay. Yeah, you like this
Sure.
this way to
Somebody
go? You want to go this
Somebody
way?
asked us, don't know why Barbara Streisand did Yentl, but that's another conversation. Although
That was a big fiasco, wasn't it?
although it has some beautiful songs in it. It has a beautiful Michel Legrand score, so there's some lovely melodies in it.
And you're so right about the two-car garage. She did not want to fix that nose because for fear that her voice would go.
Yeah,
That's really a true story.
but the funny thing about Streisand is she didn't want to fix the nose, but she thought of herself as a sex symbol, right? Which she's not. She's a wonderful singer and a wonderful actress, but she's not a sex symbol. And if you see one of the most hilarious vanity projects of all time is a movie she made called The Mirror Has Two Faces with
Yes.
Lauren Bacall in it. It's a terrible movie, but it's funny to when you view it through the lens of a vanity project because Barbara Streisand thinks she's Michelle Pfeiffer. She
Hmm.
sculpted a movie as if she were Michelle Pfeiffer, as this beautiful girl that every man in the world's going to fall in love with. He's like, you're Barbara Streisand. You got a lot of talent, sweetheart, but you're not Michelle Pfeiffer.
Have you seen the album cover? The album covers will tell you exactly that. I mean, she's got her face in this, airbrushed kind of a way. It's just, yeah, I remember she was hot and heavy with that Barry Gibb for a short time back then. They had that album cover where she looks gorgeous. I guess as gorgeous as Barbara's going to look.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
but Barry was still better looking than she was.
Well,
That's the thing.
Barry was a good looking guy. I tell you this though, I happened to have to drop a name. I had dinner with Barry Manilow, Barry Gibb down in Miami about a year and a half ago or so, and I was really excited to meet him because I love the Bee Gees and I love that whole era of disco music in the '70s. And Barry Gibb was coming over for dinner, and I thought it'd be great and all that. And this little old man shuffled in. It was Barry Gibb, but
Yeah.
he was a little just long gray hair, and he'd broken a couple of toes, and he was on a cane. And I thought, my God, this is the man who was on the cover of the Guilty album back in the day.
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
time, Ralph takes no prisoners.
Except for us, though. We're going to
Oh, that's
survive. We're
true.
going to look good going forward.
That's
We're
true.
the exceptions to the rule, Michael.
That's it. That's right. Well, yep. Pickle us. That's it. So,
All right.
all
Hey,
right.
hey, it's been fun. Let's go with this kind of thing, this live version of the Romeo Riedel, the Riedel Romeo show. Let's do it.
Absolutely. I'm all for it. All right. You
All
take
right,
care,
man.
Ralph.
I'll see you next week. I appreciate it.
Okay. Bye bye.
Take it easy.